G'day, Sean Parker again, and let's talk about deontology. Okay, so deontology is the moral theory that describes that a correct action is a consequence of following a morally or correct and binding duty. And the word deon comes from the word for binding duty. So essentially, it's a rule-based system of ethics, and the rules derive from universalizable and rationally derived principles. So the moral commands in religious teachings are like a form of deontology, except they don't derive from reason. They derive from the command of a deity or deities. And what makes something wrong in deontology is not adhering to the duty or to the rule. So even if the consequences are good, if you don't follow the duty, the act is wrong. It's often said that deontology is the exact opposite of consequentialism, and we'll discuss consequentialism in the next lecture. And this system of ethics is most famously ascribed to a German philosopher, Immanuel Kant. And I really ummed and ahed about even mentioning Kant, but he's also is always referred to in deontology and in ethics in general. So anyway, here goes. So Kant was a German philosopher who lived in a famously ascetic and habitual lifestyle whilst being a lecturer at Königsberg, which is now in Lithuania. It's rumoured that neighbours would set their clocks by his daily walks, and if you read his work, he uses a really similar rigour. Now, I admit I'm really sympathetic to Kant's aims. That is, from where do moral commands derive, and can we have it that they derive from reason? So I promise that this is the only foray into meta-ethics that I'm going to attempt, at least in this session. But have a think about this for a minute. Before humans evolved, or if you like, if humankind suddenly disappeared, would moral and ethics disappear as well? Would they still exist? Maybe think about this another way. If you are the last person on Earth, is it possible to tell a lie? Now have a think about this maybe another way. In 300, and I've used this example before, and I'll probably use it again, in 300 BCE, the Greeks who first formulated democracy, who codified ethics, they kept slaves. So if you were a rich Greek person back then, you'd have had your own slave. Now, would that make you an evil person? So these questions have all baffled moral philosophers for centuries or millennia. And so many people have got around this by deriving their moral authority directly from religion. But religions have different things to say about what is right and wrong. For example, the Judeo-Christian Bible has moral prohibitions against eating shellfish. But other religions don't have anything to say about shellfish. Who's right? Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with practicing the tenets of your religion, but philosophers generally agree that it's a poor source of moral authority. So many people think that morals then must be relative. Our society makes what is moral. But if you were a citizen of Australia in 1950, you would have considered that to be an unmarried mother was immoral. And as I said earlier, the Greeks kept slaves. So clearly, social norms are not a logical basis for a system of morality. Okay, so what about our own system of right and wrong? Surely our own system keeps us on the straight and narrow, and surely that's our best guide. Okay, so we all have similar internal codes that are consistent across individuals and across cultures. So is this a good basis for a moral philosophy? Well, not really. I mean, I think very differently now than when I was a 20-year-old man. So am I moral now, but not then? Or was I moral then, but not now? And what about a psychopath? Now, a psychopath is someone incapable of not manipulating, dominating, or harming others. Why are their morals worse than ours, or ours worse than theirs? All right, but so what about someone from a different culture? Their moral standards might be very different. So whose is better, theirs or ours? Is there any answer to this relativism? Well, many philosophers are of the view that morals should not be relative and that moral commands and moral practice should derive from reason or rationality. And Kant was famously of this view. And in a very long and complex series of arguments, Kant described that moral commands can only derive from the practical application of reason. And for Kant, this fulfills his main criterion of what constitutes moral practice, that is, of respecting humans as moral agents capable of reason. For Kant, human reason and respect for people was at the centre of his moral project. He stated that we ought to respect ourselves and each other and regard people as ends in themselves and not as means to an end. Now, what this means is that we ought not treat people in any other way than as independent agents of their own destiny. We shouldn't manipulate people. From this viewpoint, Kant developed what is known as the categorical imperative. And I won't get into what that means. You can read about that on your own. But what it really is similar to the golden rule. The golden rule is essentially treat others as you would like to be treated. So Kant flipped this to privilege human reason and to also make it universalizable, so it applies to everyone. So the categorical imperative states that an act is morally worthy if it is derived from reason and applies to everyone equally. It's formally described as act only according to that maxim whereby you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. That sort of translates as, if you're going to do something, it's only moral if it could be applied to everyone, including yourself. So let's now test this to see how it works. Now, just say that you were pondering whether it would be ethical to tell a lie. If telling a lie was to be okay, then everyone telling lies all the time would be okay. But that's really incoherent. That means that we would never trust anybody and that the basis of human communication would be lost. It's internally logically inconsistent. We're basically saying it's okay if people lie to us all the time. So on the basis of reason, not gut feeling, not appeal to law, not public opinion, on the basis of reason and rationality, telling lies cannot be rational and cannot be universalizable. Okay, so let's think about the opposite. If I was to tell the truth, is it logically consistent if we apply this to everyone? Well, yeah. If everyone told the truth, it would respect people's agency. It would lead to human flourishing and social communication would be privileged. So this is where deontology comes in, because it ticks these boxes. Because if it ticks these boxes, then it becomes a duty. We ought to tell the truth all the time to all people because it is a rationally derived principle. Now let's extend this to killing. Would it be okay to kill someone? Well, no, because if it were made universalizable, it would be okay for people to kill each other and even to kill you. So it's plainly logically inconsistent to will that people should be able to kill you. But let's think about the opposite, not killing. Not killing, if made universal, is the opposite. It's consistent to the duties to oneself and to others, and if applied, would lead to human flourishing, respecting people as autonomous agents. It's also logical. No one wants to be killed, so therefore let's not kill others. Okay, that's the end of the subject. We fixed it. We found out how to live. Let's just apply the categorical imperative all the time. Not so fast. Now, can we just derive rational rules and strictly apply them? Well, Kant thought so. He made no exceptions to his rationally derived rules. But can we really just derive rules and apply them strictly? Do these rules apply all the time to all the people in all situations? Now, what you to do now is have a quick break, actually. I want you to pause the video and have a think about how universalizable these rules really are. So I want you to think of a time when you should lie to someone, and I want you to think of a time when people can legitimately be killed. We'll come back and I'll go through a couple of examples and we'll see really how successful deontology is. Oh, are you back? Okay. All right, so I'm really curious to see what you come up with. So what I'd like you to do is put them in this week's discussion, if you wish. But I'm going to go through a couple of examples, a couple of my famous examples. So firstly, should we lie to people? Should it be the case that we ought not lie at any time? Well, think about white lies. Now, think about this scenario. Your work colleague or your university colleague or friend asks you to a movie that you really don't want to see. And they're also bringing their really boring partner or really boring friend. You'd rather chew off your own arm than spend time with them. What do you say? Do you follow the categorical imperative and tell the truth and say, look, to be honest, I really don't like your partner. And I really don't want to see this movie. I don't like your choice of movies. they would obviously be really offended and you would lose the friendship. So instead, like everybody does, you tell a white lie. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing my hair that night. Is that wrong? Is it really wrong to lie? Have a think about that. Now, here's another one which is famous, and if you read a lot of philosophy textbooks or articles, you might see this one. So this is a lie so this one's about the consequences of deontology. So you're at home, you answer, the doorbell rings, you answer the door, and your neighbour storms in looking panicked and says, "Quick, hide me. There's an axe murderer after me." And I'm sorry about my acting. So you close the door and you say, "Quick, hide in the cupboard." Your neighbour hides. Then the doorbell rings again. So you answer the door, and there's a hulking, dishevelled man covered in blood with an axe. He asks, "Where's your neighbour?" Now, Kant would say that you should tell the truth and say, "Hiding in the cupboard." But what do? If you follow the categorical imperative, if you follow your duty, then clearly the dishevelled axe murderer is going to run to the cupboard, open it up, and kill your neighbour. So clearly, the consequences of following the duty lead to more harm. So does this render deontology an inexact system? I don't have the answer. Many philosophers have debated this for decades or centuries. We're going to look at this next when we look at consequentialism, because what's really important when we think about ethics is the consequences of the rule that we follow. And if the consequences lead to more harm, then you've got to wonder, is the rule worth following? All right. So anyway, this has all been pretty abstract so far. Now I'm going to put up an example in the forum of a ethical dilemma, and I want you to think about how deontology might apply to that, because this makes it a bit more pertinent to healthcare. So that's it for deontology at this stage. And what we're going to look at next is another major principle of ethics, another major moral theory of ethics, which is consequentialism. Cheers.